All right, in the last few videos, we've introduced the idea of opportunity cost, comparative advantage, and the production possibility frontier. But we're left with a few questions. We developed this concept of specialization and the gains from specialization using the guild and their PPF. So this looks familiar from the last video, where we had Molly specializing in growing spinach and Andrew specializing in growing carrots. We had our guild PPF. We showed that if the two farmers produce the crops that they don't have a comparative advantage in, then we move on the inside of their unspecialized guild PPF. But the magic really happened when we decided to try to minimize our opportunity cost by producing the good that we have a comparative advantage in. We specialize in the thing that's lowest cost for us. And when we do that, we were able to move on the outside of this guild PPF, the unspecialized guild PPF. And this is really where the magic started to happen. We thought there was an upper limit on what was possible, but it turns out if we make our choices in a particular way, doing the thing we have a comparative advantage in, the thing that we're relatively better at, then we can actually improve on what we thought was possible before. So we had this cool animation representing a number of possible crop choices that would fall in this gains from specialization region. And remember, what we've done here is shown that we can end up on the outside of the unspecialized guild PPF. But we haven't actually picked where we would live. This is one possible point, but there are a whole range. So this purple region represents an area, many possible crop choices. All right, so we're left with two questions that we're going to try to address in this video. We introduced the idea of a guild to sort of give us some leverage here to show this bump out in the production possibility frontier. But do we actually need it? So we're going to try to answer that question. And in the process, can we get both Andrew and Molly to benefit from this bump out in the production possibility frontier, this gains from specialization? So we're going to do both of these things in this video. And to do this, we're just going to go back to two separate graphs of the two production possibility frontiers. And we're going to try to answer this question: is a guild necessary? So to think about this, we have to start by thinking about Molly and her trade with herself. If Molly wants more carrots, living in autarky, if she's producing only spinach, she can trade away 9 units of spinach to get 1 unit of carrots. That's what we had decided earlier using our math. That was her exchange rate with herself. So a movement on the PPF tells us effectively her exchange rate with herself. This is her exchange rate for between crops with herself. 1 carrot for 9 units of spinach. And we're just going to put a box around this with a negative, showing that this exchange rate, she's giving up spinach. So she's giving up spinach because that's what she's specializing in. So Molly will always take a trade if it costs her less than 9 units of spinach. She's giving up spinach, so she has to give up less to get the carrot. That's something she would be interested in doing. All right, so we're going to do the same thing but for Andrew on this side. So Andrew is growing only carrots. He's specializing in carrots, what he has a comparative advantage in. And we showed before that every carrot he gives up on the vertical axis, he's gaining 9/2, or 4.5 units of spinach. That's his exchange rate with himself. So we're just going to list this here. We have 1 unit of carrots for 4.5 units of spinach. We're going to put a plus here to show that Andrew's getting spinach by giving away carrots. This is his exchange rate on his PPF. And just like for Molly, Andrew benefits if he can get more than 4.5 units of spinach when he gives up 1 unit of carrots. And this is in contrast to Molly, where she wants to give up less spinach than what's listed here. So we have a negative here and we have a positive here. Andrew wants to get more spinach with this exchange, and Molly wants to give up less spinach with this exchange. All right, so we're going to introduce one possible exchange rate, one sort of candidate exchange rate, where we have 1 unit of carrot for 6 units of spinach. And we're going to be thinking about Molly's exchange rate and Andrew's exchange rate. And we're going to see if we can make both Molly and Andrew better off with this trade. So we're going to try to facilitate a trade between Andrew and Molly with this purple trade. And one way of visualizing this is to draw a line through Molly's production point. Just like with the PPF, we have this line running through this point. Her PPF is effectively her trade with herself. This purple line represents the trade that we're trying to facilitate. So just like we could before, we could draw a line, sort of trace out this line with an exchange of spinach for carrots. So we see a horizontal move giving up spinach and a vertical move getting carrots. And what we can see here is if she's trading with herself, she gives up all the way up to 18 units of carrots. And she gets 18 units of spinach, and she gets 3 units of carrots in exchange. But if she trades away the same amount of spinach, according to this exchange rate, then she gets 4.5 units of carrots, giving up the same amount of spinach. So Molly prefers this exchange rate to trading with herself. She wants to grow spinach and then trade it away for carrots. That's what this is telling us. We can perform a similar exercise with Andrew. So just like we did with Molly, we're going to plot a line that runs through Andrew's production point, his point of specialization, and then we're going to draw a line, sort of trace the 2 lines, and see how much carrots on the vertical axis he has to give away to get 9 units of spinach. So if he's trading with himself, if he's growing spinach, exchanging his cropland from carrots to growing spinach, he gets, in the end, he has to give away 2 units of carrots to get 9 units of spinach. But if he grows only carrots and gives away 1.5 units of carrots, he could end up with the same 9 units of spinach, which leaves him with 2.5 units of carrots left over and 9 units of spinach. So doing the trade, he's left with more carrots and exactly the same amount of spinach. So Andrew also benefits from this trade. All right, so we can represent a trade with oneself using the PPF and a trade using an exchange rate, so exchanges between the 2 farmers using this purple exchange rate. And we've just pinned down one possible exchange rate in purple. But we can look at others. Well, before we move on, let's look at one possible trade here where we can actually facilitate this trade. So we don't know, we haven't pinned down how much each wants to trade with the other. That's a question for a different day. All we're going to show here is that Molly giving up 12 units of spinach, going from 45 to 32. If she were to exchange land from spinach to carrots, growing it herself, she would have 1.33 units of carrots. Where if she grew only spinach and traded it away to Andrew, she could have 2. So Molly's happy with this trade. Andrew receives this 12 units of spinach from Molly, and he's giving away 2 units of carrots. So we go from 4 down to 2. So Andrew is giving away 2 units of carrots, getting 12 units of spinach. Molly's giving away 12 units of spinach and getting 2 units of carrots. If Andrew was to grow this spinach himself, as shown by the PPF, he would end up with 1.3 units of carrots. So Andrew's better off because he has left over more carrots than he would if he were to try to grow all the spinach himself. Okay, so both are benefiting from this exchange, exchanging 2 units of carrots for 12 units of spinach. Both are better off in this case. That's amazing. That's just amazing. So we've made both farmers better off using this exchange rate, following their comparative advantage and specializing in the crop they have a lower opportunity cost in. And we can find a trade that makes this happen. All right, so let's run through a couple other examples here. So let's look at the case when we have a trade of 1 unit of carrot for 10 units of spinach. So we're trading, just like we did before, we're trading for 12 units of spinach. So Andrew's getting 12, Molly's giving up 12 on the horizontal. In this case, Andrew is left over with much more carrots following this exchange rate than he would if he were to grow the spinach himself. Molly, on the other hand, would actually prefer to grow her own carrots than to go with this trade. If she did the trade, you can see that these 2 points are sort of sitting on top of each other. But the lower one is the trade, and the higher one is the PPF. So at this exchange rate, Molly's actually better off growing the carrots herself, whereas Andrew actually likes this trade. So in this case, only Andrew benefits and Molly doesn't benefit. So with an exchange rate this extreme, Molly is not willing to form one side of this trade. So this trade will fail. We need both sides to be happy with the trade. So let's look at another example. Let's make this sort of less extreme in the other direction. So, the last one wasn't good for Molly and it was very good for Andrew. Let's look at one where it's very good for Molly and maybe less good for Andrew. And you can probably see where this is going. So let's look at an exchange of 12 again. So Molly's giving up 12 units of spinach. Andrew's gaining 12 units of spinach. For Molly, this trade is very good. She ends up with 3 units of carrots, where if she were to grow it herself, she would end up with only 1.33. Andrew, on the other hand, gets 12 units of spinach, but if he were to grow it himself, he would be left with 1.33 units of carrots, but if he does the trade, he's only left with 1 unit of carrots. So Andrew's actually not happy with this, but Molly is. So Molly's the only one benefiting from this trade. Andrew will opt out, which means that Molly actually won't be able to make this trade happen. So Molly doesn't benefit either. So Molly likes the exchange rate, but because Andrew's not going to follow through, Molly doesn't end up receiving the benefits from this trade. Okay, so we've looked at 2 examples, one where Molly benefits and Andrew doesn't. And then before that, we looked at an example where Andrew benefited, but Molly didn't. And in both of those cases, one of the 2 parties wasn't happy. But going back to our original example, we see any exchange rate that runs through our 2 points of specialization and lives on the outside of the PPF. These we can make both sides better off. And it turns out, as long as this exchange rate, 1 carat for some number, is between their opportunity cost, between 9 and 4.5, any number that falls between these two numbers makes both parties better off. So we can end up with a whole range of possibilities. Okay, so the punchline here, we have used the idea of opportunity cost to figure out who has a comparative advantage. We figured out who has the comparative advantage. We've specialized in those things, who is relatively better at growing each thing, and they follow that as their specialization. And then we've used their opportunity cost, how much they're giving up, to then find an exchange rate that allows them to exchange with each other. And this can make both farmers better off. All right, we're going to leave it here. I'll see you in the next one.